Peas on Moss is brought to you by Kimberly Schaub, a culinary scientist turned business developer. Over the past 4 years, the audience has downloaded episodes over 40,000 times, and we have 1,500 impressions across the website and a host of social media platforms. Will you consider contributing to the show to help keep it on air? Donations through Patreon help to offset the cost of web hosting, editing, and producing the various Peas on Moss offerings, from podcast episodes to videos, and every little bit helps. From corporate advertisement to sponsored content and private contributions. Reach out to me on peasonmoss.com for details. Welcome to the Peas on Moss podcast, friend. I'm your host, Kimberly Schaub. I'm a research chef turned business developer with a passion for food product innovation and for the complex and intricate process involved to bring great food ideas to life and to your grocery store shelf or table. Each month, I'm bringing you interviews with professionals in the food industry to share our experiences with you, to help demystify the work that we do and to help you in your food business work. This month's interview is between two incredible chefs who I know through the Research Chefs Association. In March 2021, the RCA hosted a fully virtual conference and highlighted the incredible diversity of our membership, whose work ranges from individual proprietors and research consultancies to corporate chefs in multi-billion-dollar brands, as well as chefs in roles away from active cooking or product development. We all share a common passion and origin in culinary arts, and we often blur career boundaries by blending food science, technology, and culinary in unique specialties. The conversation you're about to hear is an excerpt from the Research Chefs Association conference interview that I co-hosted with Chef Wiley Bates III. In this clip, you'll hear Chef Wiley and Chef Kevin Mitchell discuss the overlooked and often erased contributions of African Americans on the development of American cuisine, especially Southern food. It was a conversation where I learned quite a bit about our culture's food history, and it's just a taste of the information that Chef Kevin has in his new book, Taste the State, which publishes this August. Take a listen and then jump on the RCA's Learning Library to hear the entire clip of the conference presentation, plus find more presentations from past conferences and webinars.
I did want to shift gears, Kevin, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the other side of the world that you live on. We've talked about your education. We've talked plenty about the diversity and quite frankly, the contributions of not only the Southern food movement. We've talked about obviously the historical grounding of African American contribution in the Americas from a food perspective. But I want to kind of pivot a little bit about gaining additional access for our RCA members, more specifically even our students and or our professionals if they wanted to grow their know-how. But let's start with maybe on the media side of things. What have you been active in?
Well, back in early 2020, I was designated as a South Carolina Chef Ambassador. Yeah. And the Chef Ambassador program was a program that I believe it's about 6 or 7 years old now. And it's a program where chefs are chosen by the governor of the state to represent the state and travel throughout and just really speak the gospel of, South Carolina ingredients.
Awesome.
So once again, what we do is, kind of travel through, talk about South Carolina ingredients, give lectures and demos, so on and so forth. So that's kind of one of the things I've been doing. I'm also, a lot of people know that my work really deals with, the history of enslaved cooks and really being a voice and a face for not only the cooks that we know of, the Nat Fullers, the James Hemings, who cooked for Thomas Jefferson. Also, the chef for, his name escapes me right now, but for George Washington, sure. So on and so forth. But also just giving a name and a voice and a face for those that we don't know, who, were the cooks in the big house, who, prepared meals for, their slave owners, the mistresses of the home. So I've been able to work with several former plantations to kind of tell the story of who these people were, what they cooked. And so I work with the Nathaniel Russell House, which is a former plantation we were able to, Historic Charleston Foundation asked me to come on board to interpret the stories of the cooks because they were able to find seeds, rice grains, peach pits, things that were actually preserved in rats' nests, right? So them finding all these botanical things related to food, of course, they wanted a chef to kind of come on board and help interpret their lives. So the major thing that's coming up is, of course, the release of. So the book is called Taste the State: South Carolina's Signature Foods, Recipes, and Their Stories. It is written with Dr. David Shields, who once again kind of is a intelligent, major food historian. He's the one that, of course, as I mentioned, brought me the story of Nat Fuller. And in this book, we are writing about South Carolina ingredients and also specific dishes tied to South Carolina. So if you look at the book more as a dictionary, we are listing things, in alphabetical order. And we are basically looking at them as entries. So we write about, the history of okra as it relates to South Carolina. Carolina gold rice, purlus, also specific products that may have been produced here in the state as well. The entries will also include classical recipes from the 1800s, from the 1700s, actually written in the way recipes were written back then. Okay. Also, I've been able to produce some more contemporary recipes that I have written myself. So I've included a recipe on that coconut braised black-eyed pea stew, collard green dish that I write about in the book. And interesting enough, Bene is an entry in the book as well. We write about, the importance of pot liquor and what it means to, the enslaved people in Charleston and what pot liquor is. Of course, we know it's that really nice liquid that's left in the pot of cooked greens, whether it's cabbage, mustard greens, collard greens. And we write the story of how slave owners would eat a pot of greens and they would give that liquor that was left over to the enslaved, not really knowing that it's extremely nutritious, and how the slaves were able to to live off of that particular liquor that comes from those greens. Right. There are some really nice photos. It is available for pre-sale right now through Amazon, through the University of South Carolina Press, who is publishing the book for us.
Awesome.
And at least 10 or so other websites that will carry the book. Interesting enough, the book will be, you can walk to your local Walmart and the book is for sale in Walmart. The book will be for sale in Target as well. So awesome. We do believe the publication or the drop date is August the 30th. Of course, if you pre-order, you'll get it prior to that. We have some book signings lined up for that. So I'm really excited about this book.
Awesome. And again, so I'll just take a break in the action here. I would personal plea to all my RCA members who are going to hop on this RCA Plus session. Would love for you to lean in on this book, learn a little bit about our history, learn a bit about the culture of the Carolinas, but more importantly, support our good friend here, Chef Kevin Mitchell, and of course his co-author David Shields. And so we appreciate you taking the time. I had just one last point of interest that as we think about, RCA Plus, one of the things that we lean in on, of course, not only is it a organization that brings together many facets of our industry, whether it be a chef, food scientist, and others who join forces to create this awesome organization. But also we always lean into the importance of education. Me being a member of our education foundation and our emphasis on our student body and people who want to grow. One of the things that I got excited about that, again, if I had an opportunity to do it, you are also teaching a CIA Black Studies, some new curriculum online. Can you share a little bit about that, and how do we access that?
Yeah, well, that class it's called African American Chefs in Southern Foodways. It is an online class offered to students there at the New York campus, those who are in the Applied Food Studies program. I do believe culinary students can take that as an elective. And in that class, basically, we discuss any topic associated with Southern foodways. So, of course, we hit heavy on race. We hit heavy on enslaved cooks. Most importantly, we hit heavy on gender issues, right? Awesome. A lot of times women are kind of, we make women disappear in this, in the topic of Southern food. But, for me, doing the research on a lot of enslaved cooks and the ads, that, if you wanted an enslaved cook, you can go to the local newspaper, and in this ad, it would say for sale, Black or mulatto, French pastry or complete cook. And most of the ads, of course, were for the sale of women. And we discussed, of course, our background. We know a lot of African-American chefs who get into this business because they were taught by a woman in their house, whether it was their mother or their grandmother. So we talk a lot about the gender issues, and we talk about, the importance of uplifting women in this subject of Southern food. Southern
Sure.
foodways. We talk about cultural appropriation, like when is it cultural appropriation, or when is it exploitation, or when is it appreciation? And
Absolutely.
Understanding how those subjects get really intermeshed and intertwined, and and how those are hard conversations to have. Especially as a chef, when all we want to do is cook really great food.
Sure.
But we also want to make sure we honor those who, create the food and the dishes and the history of where it comes from, right? So, that's another subject that we discuss. We'll discuss cookbooks in that class as well. So there's so many, and it's a 15-week course that they do take online. Hopefully, eventually, it may be something that will be offered on campus. Where it could be, as a guest lecturer coming to speak to the students one-on-one. But also, I do want to kind of give a shout out to CIA as well, because we've created another course that is connected to the African diaspora. It is a 10-week course that students take every Saturday. And what we've done is every Saturday for an hour, you will have a lecture by a subject matter expert that is connected to the African diaspora. So what's really cool is after the lecture, there's about 20 students that actually go into a kitchen and they have a practicum where each subject matter expert has sent an array of recipes over, and the students actually cook those recipes, and they sit down and have this meal and discuss, the similarities of, from each week. And we're hoping that that's going to stem into a larger concentration on African cuisine that will be, of course, given at the CIA.
Yeah, as we wrap up this RCA session, and again, for those of you who might have jumped in session to session, this is the comedic history of with chef scholar Kevin Mitchell. And we discussed a little bit of Benicie. We talked a lot about cultural things that from an African-American perspective. We talked about Southern foodways. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to, again, ADM, as well as Kimberly from Peas on Moss for engaging, and more importantly, to our leadership with the RCA Plus as we lean in and understand the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the RCA. Greatly appreciate their commitment to excellence as we introduce our RCA members to Chef Kevin Mitchell and all the infinite wisdom that you bring. And I really appreciate you bringing the historical perspective of who we are as a culinary body, but more specifically as an African-American culinary body, and how we have contributed in many ways to what American cuisine is, specifically even Southern cuisine, which is what you've touched on quite a bit today. So I'm greatly appreciating you wholeheartedly coming in and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. Appreciate your time, and I wish you well, my friend. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining this Peas on Moss Quick Bite. I hope you've been enjoying them. I'm pivoting the podcast content frequency to monthly episodes, and I'm bringing you clips about interviews and conversations we're having over at the Research Chefs Association Hustlers Under 40 Young Professionals Network Group. I'm bringing guest speakers to drop their knowledge, as well as asking members to step up and share their insights and experiences too. We spend our monthly gatherings in real talk about careers, work challenges, and possible solutions, technical questions, and strategies that members can start activating. While the focus of the group is in the first decade of a professional's career, the group is open to everyone under 140 years old. We'd love to have you join for any or all of the gatherings. Go to Peas on Moss and sign up for the newsletter. So, where does this leave the podcast? Well, I'll be airing clips of the Hustler interviews for everyone here to hear. The podcast itself will be reducing publication to monthly as I work to make room for my MBA. As always, the podcast costs are carried primarily by me and a few generous Patreon sponsors, as well as by Saltblade, an artisan cured meat maker in Seattle. I'm always open to additional sponsorship and advertisement, so if you like this content and would like to see more of it, please let me know by sponsoring the podcast and helping me offset the ongoing publication costs. Thank you for being a steady listener of the Peas on Moss podcast. If you'd like to share the love, pop on over to the website peasonmoss.com and buy a new sticker and advertise us on your water bottle or coffee cup.